deep one. You bet! Caitlin Clark, absolutely ridiculous.
Caitlin Clark walked into the WNBA, and the entire basketball world held its breath. LeBron gave advice. Steph made comparisons. Shaq dropped a bold claim. Kevin Durant couldn't look away. But here's what nobody is talking about. One NBA legend looked at all this Caitlin Clark hype and said, "Not yet. The records are breaking. The crowds are showing up."
Fans of all ages ready to celebrate a Hawkeye fever here in Iowa.
The merchandise is selling out. Yet somewhere between the praise and the glory, a very different opinion is hiding in plain sight. When everyone saw the highlights, not everyone saw the full picture. The truth about what these legends really think is far more complicated than you know. Stay with us. We reveal everything. The Olympics decision that split everyone. Then came the decision that genuinely confused the basketball world. Caitlin Clark was left off the U.S. Women's Olympic basketball team. No explanation, no press conference, no committee member stepped forward to justify it, just a list released, and her name wasn't on it. The reaction was immediate and loud. Fans couldn't understand it. The media couldn't explain it. And NBA legends, people who understood the business of basketball better than almost anyone, were baffled. Social media went into full meltdown mode. Trending topics, angry posts, think pieces from every sports journalist with a keyboard. Everyone had an opinion, and almost none of them were calm. Think about what was happening at that exact moment. Clark had just become the most talked about name in women's sports. She was breaking viewership records every week. Merchandise was selling out. Arenas that used to have empty seats were suddenly packed. New fans who had never watched a WNBA game in their lives were tuning in just to watch her play. And the committee looked at all of that and still said no. Paul Pierce, who doesn't always say the most measured things, actually became the voice of reason here. Michael Jordan and the 1992 Dream Team proved that. They turned basketball into a worldwide game in one summer.
She has been a leader for U.S. team.
Hungary 22, Caitlin Clark for another three.
Billions of people who had never cared about the NBA suddenly knew who Scottie Pippen was, who Charles Barkley was, who Magic Johnson was because they watched that team play in Barcelona. And the women's committee just passed on the one player who could have done the same for them. Pierce didn't mince words. He said sometimes the game is bigger than individual egos or internal politics, and this was one of those moments. He was saying the quiet part out loud that maybe this wasn't purely about basketball ability. Maybe there were other factors at play. Veteran politics, locker room dynamics, a system that wasn't ready to hand a rookie the spotlight that veterans had spent years working toward. But then Reggie Miller pushed back. Hard. He said Caitlin Clark is not one of the 12 best players in the world right now, and the selection committee made the right call. And then he went further. He said naming her in the top 15 players being considered was actually a disservice to her because it got her fan base worked up over something that was never going to happen. He was essentially saying, stop inflating her status before she's actually earned it at the global level. Popularity and ability are two different things. Haridem and the Olympics picked the best players, not the most famous ones. That created a real split. On one side, Pierce, KD, Shaq, Barkley, Steph, and Luka. All of them are basically saying she should have been on that team. On the other side, Reggie Miller, standing alone, saying pump the brakes. Clark was undeniably the biggest story in women's basketball, but the WNBA is full of experienced international players who have been competing at the highest level for years. Was it fair to bump one of them for a rookie, no matter how talented? And Kevin Durant's take on this whole thing was maybe the most interesting of all. He recalled the first time he saw her play in person, and he looked up and immediately thought, yeah, that tracks. He could see it without anyone telling him. The way she commanded the ball, the way the whole offense ran through her, the way every other player on the court seemed to be playing off her energy.
Another feed inside, and Stuckey finishes! Clark's 8th assist!
KD said it hit him out of nowhere. Not a gradual realization, just an immediate, undeniable truth that announced itself the moment she touched the ball. And when someone like Kevin Durant, a two-time NBA champion, A scorer who has spent his entire career studying the best players on earth walks into a gym cold and within 5 minutes points to you as the best player in the building. That means something. That's not hype talking. And that's a basketball mind recognizing something real. So how do you leave that player off an Olympic team? That question still doesn't have a clean answer. And for a lot of people watching, it never will. The rivalry that saved the WNBA. There's a storyline building around Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese that feels bigger than either of them. Magic Johnson was the first legend to name it out loud. He called them the Magic and Bird of the WNBA. That's not a small thing to say. Magic and Larry Bird didn't just make the NBA better. They saved it. The league in the late 1970s was struggling for viewers, struggling for relevance. Nobody was watching. TV deals were weak. The finals were being aired on tape delay, meaning people watched the championship game the next morning, not live. That's how bad it was. Then these two came in with a rivalry so electric that millions of people who had never watched basketball suddenly couldn't look away. Ratings exploded. Arenas sold out. The sport became a cultural conversation that went way beyond sports. Magic believes Clark and Reese are doing the same thing for the WNBA right now. The drama, the emotion, and the back-and-forth moments are creating the kind of tension that keeps audiences coming back every single night. And what's interesting is that their rivalry didn't start in the pros. It started in college. Clark at Iowa, Reese at LSU. Two completely different styles, when two completely different personalities, two completely different fan bases, and every time they shared a court, something happened that people couldn't stop talking about. Draymond Green and Derek Fisher went even deeper with this comparison. The country was in a different place back then, and that tension added fuel to an already burning rivalry. Draymond and Fisher looked at Clark and Reese and said, "We've seen this movie before." The history wasn't just repeating itself. It was following almost the same script, beat for beat, and that context matters. Because this rivalry isn't just about basketball, it's about two women who represent something different to different people. Clark brings in a fan base that hadn't been watching women's basketball before.
Nearly 10 million people watching. Maybe we can break that 10 this year. Deep three, Caitlin Clark.
Reese brings a fierceness and confidence that resonates deeply with her own community. Together, they created a conversation that went from sports pages to front pages. That doesn't happen by accident. Kevin Garnett had a completely different read on the tension, though. When people started reacting to how other WNBA veterans were treating Clark on the court, the rough play, the physicality, the cold shoulders, KG didn't see disrespect. He saw fear, pure and simple. In his view, when players start coming at you hard, when nobody is giving you easy nights, when veterans who have been in the league for years are suddenly playing with extra edge when they face you, that's a compliment. Cool. That means they know you're dangerous. Nobody game plans for someone they're not worried about. Nobody throws an elbow at someone who doesn't scare them. KG has been on both sides of that equation his whole career, and he recognized it immediately. And Carmelo Anthony added a layer to all of this that most people weren't talking about. He pointed out that we're not used to seeing women be openly emotional in sports the way Clark is. The frustration on her face after a bad call. The fire in her eyes after a big shot, the way she pumps her fist, slaps the floor, and wears every single moment on her sleeve for the whole world to see. Carmelo said that's what makes her different, not just her game, but the fact that she refuses to hide it. She doesn't tone herself down for anyone. In a world that often asks women athletes to be graceful and composed, Clark chose passion instead, and audiences couldn't get enough of it. Gilbert Arenas put a hard number on all of it. Just 5 games into Caitlin Clark's WNBA career, the league sold more merchandise than in all of last year combined. Not half the year, not most of the year, all of it in 5 games. That's not a coincidence. That's not a marketing campaign. That's what happens when a rivalry becomes a story and a story becomes something the whole world needs to follow. Shaq and Barkley don't lie. Shaquille O'Neal doesn't hand out compliments for free, never has. And the man spent his entire career talking about how he was the best, how nobody could stop him, how opponents should consider themselves lucky just to share a court with him. 4 championships, 3 finals MVPs, a body that literally broke the shot clock support system off the backboard. Shaq has never been the guy who builds other people up.
For 19 years, Shaquille O'Neal dominated the NBA with his size and even bigger personality.
He's always been the guy who reminds you that he's already at the top. So when Shaq steps back and says someone else is the greatest, you stop what you're doing and pay attention. After watching Caitlin Clark, Shaq went on record and called her the greatest female college player of all time. Not one of the greatest, not top 5, the greatest, full stop. He said he saw her play against LSU and was completely blown away. And the way he said it wasn't polite small talk, it was the kind of statement you make when you've seen something that genuinely surprised you. He didn't say she has potential or that she could be great someday. He said she already is. Past tense. Done deal. Case closed. That's a bold thing to say. Women's college basketball has produced incredible players over the decades. Players who dominated their eras, won championships, and went on to long professional careers. To look at all of that history and say one player sits above all of them is not something you say lightly. But Shaq said it anyway. And then Charles Barkley watched one single game where she dropped 49 points, and his reaction was one word: monster. Not a great player, not impressive, rookie, not she's got a bright future. When a performance goes beyond what your brain expected and forces you to reach for a stronger word just to describe it accurately. Barkley has been watching basketball his entire life, and he chose that word. That should tell you everything. Now consider what these two men represent. Shaq and Barkley have watched thousands of games between them. They've seen generational talent up close, not from the stands, but on the actual court, guarding them, getting scored on by them, competing against the best players in history. They've played against Michael Jordan, against Hakeem, against Kobe in his prime, and after all of that, after everything they've witnessed across decades of professional basketball, and they watched a WNBA rookie and reacted like they just saw something completely new. That reaction alone is worth more than any stat line, but the stat lines came anyway. In just her first weeks as a professional, Caitlin Clark became the 4th WNBA player ever and the first rookie to record 30 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks in a single game. That's impacting every single part of the game in one night.
Caitlin Clark, she became the first ever rookie to secure a triple-double in WNBA history.
Defense, playmaking, rebounding, and still putting up 30 points? While experienced veterans tried everything to stop her, she reached 100 points and 50 assists faster than any rookie in WNBA history. In May alone, her very first full month as a professional, she averaged 17.6 points, 6.6 assists, and 5.1 rebounds per game. She wasn't a viral moment. She wasn't a one-week story. She was doing it consistently, game after game, against players who had scouted her, studied her, and still couldn't find an answer. And these weren't inflated numbers against weak competition. This was the WNBA, a league full of experienced professionals, many of them international stars who had been preparing for Caitlin Clark all season. They knew she was coming. They had a whole offseason to figure her out, and she still made them look like they had no idea what was happening. Shaq called it. Barkley confirmed it. The numbers sealed it. Steph said what everyone was thinking. If the controversy was loud, the praise was louder. Steph Curry gets asked about Caitlin Clark constantly, at press conferences, in interviews, in casual post-game conversations, and every single time, his answer is the same. She's special. But it's not just that he said she's good, it's what he said that's interesting. He talked about her range, her fearlessness, her three-point shooting, the way she pushes the line every single night, knowing defenders will try to close out on her, and she still pulls up anyway. And he said there's no such thing as a bad shot when you shoot it as she does. But here's the thing that stood out. Everything Steph described about Caitlin Clark is how everyone describes Steph Curry. The deep range, the pull-up threes in transition, the fearlessness from anywhere on the floor. The element of surprise that no defense can game plan for because it's completely different from what they've seen before. And then Luka Doncic said it out loud. He called her the female Steph Curry. He watched her put up 41 points and nearly a triple-double and said,
Clark, another step-back triple, already at double digits in points, scored or assisted on.
"That's Steph Curry right there. Just a woman. Coming from Luka, a guy who's considered one of the best offensive players in the NBA right now, that carries weight." Luka even went further. He said she can shoot it better than he. Now you have to stop and think about that for a second. Luka Doncic, a guy who drains threes from the logo, who Euro steps past 7-footers, someone who can score from literally anywhere, is saying a WNBA rookie shoots the ball better than he does? Is that humility? Is that genuine shock at what he watched? Whatever the reason, when the best players in the world start comparing you to Steph Curry, it means the basketball conversation has shifted in a direction nobody expected. The warning LeBron gave her before Caitlin Clark ever played her first professional game, LeBron James already had something to say. Now that's not unusual. LeBron talks about everything. But this time, what he said wasn't just about basketball. It felt more like a warning. LeBron told her to put her blinders on, keep her head down, go to work, don't get pulled into the noise, and whatever she does, keep her mouth shut early on and learn from the veterans. Only speak when spoken to. At first glance, that sounds harsh, but LeBron knows what that kind of spotlight does to a young player. He lived it himself at 18. The media circus, and the endless comparisons, the pressure to be perfect every single night. He went through all of that, and he came out the other side knowing one thing. The fastest way to lose control of your career is to open your mouth too early. Caitlin Clark was already the most talked about name in women's basketball.
Here comes Clark. How will she go for history? There it is! The all-time leading scorer in women's college basketball.
Before she ever got on an NBA-sized stage. Social media had been running with her clips for 2 years. Her college numbers were historic. Her fan base was unlike anything the WNBA had seen. But LeBron knew that with all of that came a target on her back. He said it plainly, everyone is going to be waiting for you to slip up. Say something wrong, react in the wrong moment, and when you do, they will blow it up 10 times bigger than it actually is. Was LeBron being protective? Was he being cautious? Or does he know something about Caitlin Clark that most people haven't figured out yet? Because what he described wasn't just general advice. It felt personal. Like he'd been watching her very closely and saw something that made him think this girl needs to be careful. And for someone who rarely hands out free life advice to other athletes, that alone should tell you something. So where does that leave us? LeBron warned her to stay humble. Steph and Luka are calling her the female version of the greatest shooter alive. Shaq is crowning her the best college player ever. Barkley is calling her a monster. Magic compares her to his own legacy. Now Garnett is calling the hate a sign of fear. Arenas is showing the numbers that prove her star power. Pierce is defending her Olympic snub. And Reggie Miller, the one voice in the room, is saying not so fast. The truth is, all of these opinions together paint a picture of something rare. A player who has divided the smartest basketball minds in the world, not because she's overrated, but because she's forcing everyone to ask a question they weren't ready for yet. Caitlin Clark didn't just change the WNBA, she changed the conversation.
The most dynamic player in the game.
LeBron, Steph, Shaq, Luka, KD, Magic, these are not people who talk about just anyone. These are legends who have seen everything basketball has to offer. And they all stopped what they were doing to talk about one person. That alone tells you everything. Whether you believe the hype or you're on Reggie Miller's side, one thing is impossible to argue. This story is not over. The records will keep falling, and the opinions will keep shifting, and the world will keep watching. If you made it to the end of this video, you already know Caitlin Clark is just getting started. Drop a comment. Is she already the greatest, or is it too early to say?